Good morning. Welcome everyone to our Wednesday morning class. Thank you for you that are here in person, always appreciated. And for you that might be joining us online and you that will catch us later. Today we're starting not a new subject for a lot of you, but I hope a different level of this subject. So I know a lot of you come from the teachings of the 12 powers who have been in unity, especially. It's one of their major teachings. So let me just review a few things that brings me to this subject today. Back in 1980, if you remember my story, I was a co-minister in Peoria, Illinois, and was walking down the sidewalk, kind of in a state of, there's got to be more. You ever get in that state? There's just got to be more. I don't know what it is, but there's got to be more. Because I think when you're doing that, you're in an awareness that something's trying to come in to you. If you get that feeling, okay, there's got to be more to this. And so that's kind of the state I was in. And I think being in that state was, as I teach, is always a frequency. So therefore, what state you're in and what frequency you're in is what you attract in that frequency. That's the true law of attraction, is like attracts like. So being in that state, I was open for whatever was coming to me. And I looked down and there was a track that was laying on the sidewalk. It was kind of crumbled up and whatever. So I guess threw it down. And something said to me, pick it up. I thought, well, I won't pick up this trash. I don't just, the whole left brain thing kind of took off with me. But my spirit, my faith overrode that, and I picked it up and looked at it, and it was a pamphlet that said The 12 Powers by Charles Fillmore. At that time, I did not know of Charles Fillmore. If I knew of unity, it was very much in the back of my mind. I knew nothing about it other than I think someone told me, stay away from it. I really do. I think that's the first thing I heard about unity was it was not real Christian, mainstream Christian. It was, so I was just blown away by this information and idea of Fillmore's writings on the 12 powers. And I began to talk about it in the little group that I was with in Peoria. Now, they were not as far along as Fillmore would be, but they were an open little group and had kind of given me permission to be free about whatever I wanted to share with them. So I started sharing what I saw and got out of it. And did not run into it again until my first step into unity, which would be Unity of Charlotte. And that is the first unity church that welcomed me, and I gained quite a long relationship with. And that was in 1988, 89. And that's when Unity was all on Sharon View in a little house. And that wonderful piece of land. Oh my God, can you imagine in South Park what that land be worth today? But it was still worth a lot of money because they sold that and bought the big church then on Woodlawn. And that was Randolph Wilkins that did that. So I've been through a lot of the unity and heard a lot about the 12 powers and all of that. But actually, you got to remember, it doesn't matter about how nicely you connect with something intellectually. If you don't get the consciousness behind it, it doesn't mean a lot to you. It's just stored knowledge. Just stored knowledge. And to me, for a long time, it was just stored knowledge. It was just cool. I read the pamphlet, and I kind of got the idea. But it was only some years later that I actually Thank you, Michael. That I actually had the experience of it entering into my consciousness, and that aha moment, I get it. That's what y'all are looking for, by the way. Until you get that aha moment, you don't want to qualify it. Keep it on your shelf. Keep it neutral. Be patient and wait. Those that wait upon Spirit shall be renewed their strength. They shall mount up with the wings of an eagle. So they're, yeah, run and not be weary. That's right. So it is. You got to learn the waiting. The waiting is what we call sacred pause, or entering still point in some teachings. They're very important. They're just as important as written music. People who write music, and they write music with eighth notes, and whole notes, and half notes, and whatever, rest. That rest is just as important as those notes. Without those, you would lose the true rhythm of the song, of the music. So I think we need to learn that in life sometimes. And I think heart math is one of the best things that you can do to take that pause. And as you heard Elaine them talking, that a lot of these are only 3-minute things. They're not going to take a lot of your time. And the fact that they're so short, I would say do them more times a day. It'd be easier to do 3 minutes than a 20-minute twice meditation, which people find kind of difficult to do that. But anyway, I want to bring this to you based on my experience with this information as it became a part of my consciousness, and so may become a part of your consciousness. What part of it is basically for you to do that. Let me just start out with understanding the 12 powers. First, before I read this, let's make it again clear that there's only one power. And Unity says that over and over. There is one power, one good, God the good. I hear it over and over and over. And yet that they wanted to then from that saying say, we're going to have a class on the 12 powers. So people were coming to me at Unity and saying, I'm a little confused. I'm not interested in the 12 powers because you said there's one power. But we have to realize the one power manifests itself in different levels. Everything does. You've got to start thinking in this, where we are on the path of awakenment and consciousness. You've got to think more vertically than linear. And that's what I see in this symbol of the cross. You know, I'm sorry, I'm not going to throw any of these symbols away because they carry deep meanings. The cross doesn't start with Christians.
That's your thing.
You know, it was a stolen thing. I mean, you can go back to Native Americans, you can go back to indigenous people. They all used the cross. So the cross to me is a cross point or a choice point. And many of us who have entered this point in consciousness have that choice. Either I continue the old way of linear thinking, that B always follows A, C follows B, 2 follows 1, so on and so forth. That's the way the brain intellectually thinks. And you got to be careful with that because it also tells you if I'm here, I'm not there. See, if I'm here, I'm not there. And this fact that the parallel says we are everywhere at the same time. Many of you are familiar with this describing of God as omnipresent. Omni means everywhere present. But the linear says if I'm here at HeartLight this morning, then I'm not at home, I'm not anywhere else. But actually your true energy field, your true consciousness is all communicating with all other consciousness at the same time. And that's what the Course in Miracles teaches. All consciousness is in communication with all consciousness at the same time. When that happens, that gives us a morphogenic field. A morphogenic field. So that means wherever, there is no here and there in the world of reality. There's no here and there. Because there's no blinder for time and space. Everything, I have to give you a scripture, I'm sorry. I mean, I'm not sorry, but it's Ecclesiastes, which I had it in front of me, but it says this, that which is was, and that which was shall always be. Even the Bible teaches you that everything that is, everything that was is now, anything that will be is now. So it's a wonderful scripture that really gives us a quantum idea of the field that everything exists at some level as one consciousness. So, one power means understanding that one power through 12 different faculties, if you want to call it that, that is in the mind of the brain. I made a statement recently in meditation that I heard, my brain has lost its mind. When people say, you've lost your mind, you go, well, thank you. Because he that loses shall find it. That's a scripture. He who loses his soul, mind, shall find it. So we're finding our mind again. And it's not just in the heart. You got to be careful about that, of locating everything in one place. What's in the heart is in the mind, is in the brain. The brain has a mind of its own. The heart has a mind of its own. And it's through the mind that connection is made rather than the physical organs, but it is the mind of the brain and the heart of the mind that work together in that way. So, and we just had in the last class some scientific proof that through science and research out of Switzerland, that they have found different dimensions in the human brain. Do you remember that? Remember what it was called? The Blue Brain Project. And again, if you look it up, oh my God, the technical language in it. But I just kept plowing through it and plowing through it and plowing through it because I wanted to give validation to Barbara Hand-Clow, who made the statement that there's 11 dimensions in the human brain. But she says, according to her Palladian or galactic teaching, that in 3D we can only handle 9 of the 11. Well, if you take the 12 disciples and remove Judas to a different place, you're left with only 11 of the disciples. So everything's kind of coming together is what I'm saying. And that's what truth does. Truth shows up in so many different ways and forms, but it's all connecting us to the truth. So I'm saying that because we're not so much into just way out metaphysical New Age teachings anymore because of the climate has changed based upon research and upon science finally opening itself up to spirituality more, and spirituality opening itself to science more. So these two are beginning a marriage between each other. Now, religion is not in that equation because a religion does not want to research itself. What's the first part of research?
Not knowing.
Re. What does re mean? Again, any word, redeem, restore, all means restoring something that it was again. Repent. Yeah, all these terms have to do with that. So there's a tremendous restoring that is basically happening to us. So we know now, spiritually and scientifically, that there are different dimensions that are going on in our brain. And the fact that we may live most of our lives in the lower 3 and 4 dimensions. First 3 dimensions in the brain would be space. That means that develops what's called my sensory perception. You follow me? That means that when I perceive through my perceptions, I see all matter as height, width, and breadth. Okay? Everything. Everything has a height, everything has a width, everything has a breadth. That's space. Einstein came along and said, okay, but you've got to move through this space. So you're going to experience something called time. Time is not real, but it will be real to you because you're moving through space. And you're moving through your space at different levels of energy. Some go faster, some go slower. See, a lot of you are probably here because you went a little faster than some of your family, friends, and other people who's a little slower about opening up to new things and changing things like that. So I just wanted to say all of that to set a precedent that everything has a good proof to it anymore. It's not just a bunch of stuff being thrown out there. Charles Fillmore, Unity's co-founder, along with his wife Myrtle, was a visionary and a futurist, and that's what I think has been missing a lot with the Unitarian community and New Thought community, is somehow we have done what every other school of thought has done. One, over-organized it. And there's nothing wrong with an order, but there's a difference in over-organizing it. If you over-organize it, then you capture it and hold it within the confinements of the organized thoughts or creeds or principles or whatever it is that you use. And we got to be careful about that too, that we can't just let HeartLight be in the box of we're a spirit-guided, heart-centered, Christ-conscious living community. Those are wonderful attributes that we use to connect, but we also are open to evolve and to move beyond just that saying. It's not a box that we're in. Are you following me? Mm-hmm. And that's where growth takes place, or whatever. So we want to definitely awaken, and I think HeartLight again, well, these exercises that was done so beautifully today, is a great way to activate your more parallel. So Myrtle and Charles Fillmore were visionary. They really saw down the corridor of time. They really did. Over 150 some years, he saw when the subject would be about atoms and that type of thing, back before those words were even a part of the collective. But he saw that. He wrote about it. And he really set forth a way in which people who are embracing the unity principles and teachings will continue to grow and evolve. And many have. Many have. But usually it's individuals that grow. Does that make sense to you? Mm-hmm. A lot of you that were in that area, you went to other workshops, you read other books, you listened to other people, and you continued your own individual personal growth. I would assume that. I'm assuming. But I have a feeling that most of you went in and you did Reiki, you went in and you did different things that were not in the confinement of just unity. At one time, unity really did not endorse A Course in Miracles, although it's being taught in a lot of unity churches around the country, but at one time it just wasn't unity enough, and therefore it kind of made its way in. Same way with heart math and some other things that are more present time. And I'm not God bless unity. I love unity. I am not trying to put unity down in any way. I'm just saying that anything that boxes itself into this is our truth and is not open to evolve and to grow gets stuck in some way. The subconscious realm in man has 12 great centers of action. I like that. 12 great centers of action with 12 preceding egos or identities. Now I really like this because the ego really gets a bad name. We've made it the new devil. We say we don't believe in Satan, we don't believe in the devil, but now we've got a new character in the melodrama on the stage of our belief. And that's what happens in 3D. 3D is a melodrama. It doesn't work until you have a villain, a victim, and what else? And the hero. Of course, the hero. You know, tying to the railroad track. Here comes Simon Legree and tying and so forth. And if you really reflect on your life, you've almost been producing that drama on the stage of your life. Sometimes you've attracted people into your life that has allowed you to feel the victim. Sometimes you have somebody to rescue who's the hero. So all these things are kind of playing out psychologically in 3D. And that's maybe why Shakespeare said that the world is a stage. Mm-hmm. And those on the stage are playing this game that we call life. So one of Charles's major contributions to New Thought was his unique development of a metaphysical Bible interpretation. So that's where I connected with Unity more than I did some other New Thought groups who did not want Bible, did not want Jesus. Unity, there was room. There was room for Jesus and for metaphysical of scriptures. To understand the 12 powers, you have to know that they are 12 expressions of the one power. Oh, good. I'm glad that's said. The Christ within each of us. Christ within each of us. The 12 powers are faith, strength, wisdom, called judgment, love, power, imagination, understanding, will, order, zeal, renunciation, and life. And I just passed these out for you that are new. You have all this on here.
Release. It's not renounce, it's release. Or is it renounce?
It has the elimination organs to it, so it's eliminated. Yeah, let go, let it out, let it go. So, this class is a teaching, I guess we could call it an esoterical teaching of Jesus and the 12 disciples. So let's talk a little bit about Jesus in this context of this class. When we say Jesus, we're speaking of a man. Now, I happen to think, oh my God, I'm going to get really crazy here, but you can do what you want. If you really, the more I study the Gnostic teachings, the barbello or the womb or the female of the invisible God realized through divine wisdom that the woman or the female would not be accepted in ages under patriarchal consciousness. They knew it. They saw what was happening, that the world was going to go toward patriarchal male dominance. About all of our English, American, Western teachings are very influenced out of Greek and Roman thing. Our universities, everything, gymnasiums, it all started in Greek. So we adopted a lot of those ancient Grecian ideas and whatever into kind of Western ideas. So when we say Jesus, just Jesus, immediately we see in our human concept a man of some kind. Now, how you feel about that man is your individual right. All the way from, I don't believe there was a man ever called Jesus, to, I believe there was, but I don't know really who he was, to, I'm not sure that's his name. You can be all along the whole spectrum of how that you want to see this man. But when you just focus on Jesus, you don't understand the representation of Jesus that has to do with you, not with Jesus.
Right.
So Jesus represents the outer humanity of each and every one of us. We're all symbolically one mankind. Okay? We have bodies. That means that we have gender, race, all the things that make you a human being, a physical body, is what you appear to be. The question is that who I really am? One of the great questions in the Old and New Testament is, what is man that God is so mindful? It doesn't even answer it, because it wanted us to find the answer in ourselves. What is man that God is so mindful? I pondered that for a long time. What is man that God is so mindful? So man, in what I call its hued level, and I know there's two different ways we can go with this hue thing, you know, but the way that was given to me is I went with the spectrum of vibration and color. And I realized that to hue something is to mix it. Take it out of its pure state, mix it with something else until it's a paler image of itself. And I've used the idea of a pure red paint, but if I add water, it's a less red paint. If I keep adding water, pretty soon, it gets so pale that I can hardly see the red in it. And I think this is what man, is spirit man, did. It fell in vibration and frequency, and each time it did, it lost its purity of being a spiritual being, and ends up a hue man. Now, Jesus represents to me that part of us when we are no longer hue or a paler shade of what has been created us to be. That's why it is so important, all of this that's come out in the last 20, 30 years of raising your vibration. Think about it, how popular that has gotten in the last few decades of raising your vibration. It's everywhere. Everybody's talking about frequency. Everybody's doing things to change vibration, raise vibration. It's just everywhere in the world. Because it is time for our ascension to take place. We've descended to the point that we now qualify to ascend. So that means we have to raise our frequency or resurrect ourselves. Now, every time somebody dies or leaves a physical body, they do that at that point of transition. They go into a different level of just frequency. That's why it's really good for them how to grow in that place. It's because they don't have the body to keep pulling them down. They don't have issues with addictions and sexual and overeating and all of the stuff that just gnaws at us all the time that we're trying to deal with, that's all gone. And they're pure frequency. So we're trying to do it in the body. This is what it means that while you're still in your mortality, you can still be quickened in your mortal body. Let that same Spirit that raised Christ from the dead dwell in your mortal body. So we're trying to get both things going here without laying down our body. If we do, so be it. Whether I live or whether I die, whether I live, I am the Lord's, it says. So I don't know if I'm going to go out of this body or not, but I'm going to keep trying to raise my frequency to maybe a point where I don't have to even experience physical death. I can't believe I'm even saying that.
Well, you should.
But I'm in my spirit right now. Don't ask me that later. Because it's getting closer and closer about thinking about the transition of life that could possibly happen. But at the same time, I'm not giving up the vision. That a people will raise their conscious frequency enough that it will affect the raising of the cellular replication of the human body to meet that level.
That when that mortality must put on immortality.
That is true. Anyway, what does it have to do with this class? It has to do with the fact that this cannot happen unless we activate our power. We can't just say, I love saying that I'm the center of my power, but now we've got to look at power. What is power? And apparently, power is so powerful that it can't exist in one dimension of our consciousness. But it needs different levels of consciousness to contain it. This is what's happened with the universe. And people are still referring to God as the universe. It don't fly anymore. Because we've seen the beginning of the universe, where it started. You can see it online. You can see where the Big Bang happened 4.6 billion years ago. You can see it through the new technology of the new telescopes that are out there, the Webb scopes and everything. It's telling us. So we know the universe had a beginning, and probably in maybe millions of years, they're predicting an end. So how can you refer to a being that has no beginning and no end to a universe that has a beginning and has an end? So, what has happened is they found there's more than one universe. That there is multiverses. That's the language in all the new books and all the new talks, is multiverse. Why? Because to me, it would take an infinite amount of universe to hold something that is infinite. So I'm saying that to say with everything that you've got to think now, not on one level, this is all there is of this, but you've got to realize it on many different levels. And I think that is part of what's happening in our brains, is there is a rewiring process going on. Now, I'm not saying that we don't, as we get older, have memory issues and all that kind of thing. There is that. But there's also something going on in the higher parts of ourself that has nothing to do with that. So the Alzheimer medicine is not going to help you. All of the stuff the medical field is going to try to help you with on that part is not going to help you, because this is a spiritual thing that is happening to you as you're rewiring your brain in a way to start processing parallel data at the same time. Now, I started noticing this. Linda probably remember too, because she was around at that time. But all of a sudden, we started having conversations with each other. Somebody would ask a question, and they'd give an answer, and then all of a sudden they'd say, at some level. That's right. At some level. In other words, what they said didn't fit all levels.
That's right.
That all of a sudden I'm going, what's going on here? That people are shifting levels. They're not just talking absolute on one level, but what's true on one level is not true on another level.
That's right.
So that's going to sound like these people don't know what they believe. But what's happening is we're accessing this parallel consciousness that is awakening in us. So what I'm trying to say to you, when we say Jesus, we're saying symbolically Jesus represents us in the human form.
Okay.
With parents, with brothers and sisters, with a religion, with a culture, a time span of which we were born, an astrological sign. Jesus had all those things just like you do. You are the very pattern of Jesus, the body, the physical body. The thing that Christians don't understand in their own Bible is that once you understand and find out who Jesus is, then know him no longer by the flesh. That's what it says. Know him no longer by the flesh. This is why they never got to the Christ of Jesus, because they got stuck with just Jesus, who is saying to you, I'm only a door.
Amen.
I'm just the way. And the Christians don't open the door and see what's behind the door. Many of you did do that. You did pull back from the Christian teachings of Jesus long enough that you became an initiate to understand the Christ of God. The Christ of God is the true creator, the true spirit, the entirety, whatever you want to call it, making it all the way down to the human level to begin its ascent. You are that point. You have to start from there. Now, if you start from there, here's where some things could be beneficial. It's going to change for you. Some human habits, some human learned habits. The one that comes to me is eating. That's a strong pattern in us from our childhood. We eat like our family. We eat culturally, racially. What part of the country? We got Southern food. We got soul food. We got all kinds of food that help to identify us, who we are. Now, again, those are things that are up to you. But as you start your climb and start releasing these powers and dimensions in you, you can look for some changes to begin to take place. That's why it's not important to try to convert people to the way you think it ought to be. Don't do that. Then you're being no better than a religion who's trying to convert me to Jesus. These things have to happen. There are certain foods that I'm going to be honest with you, there's certain foods I still eat once in a while, but I know better. But there's some foods that I've totally let go of because I don't want it anymore. It wasn't about disciplining my mind. You know the old saying, work smarter, not harder. And I just think things are going to change and drop off as you climb this ladder of consciousness. Sleep patterns can change. All kinds of things start changing. And some of them go through an unstable stage before it settles into a new norm. So it doesn't feel good at that time. It's challenging. But let's stay with it. It's worth it. If there's something going on in your life that you feel what we used to call a conviction of, it's not feeling aligned, it's not feeling right with me. And I don't know about you, but that happens with me a lot. But I'm working on it. We're all work in progress, right?
Yes.
So Jesus represents, but not just any human being. He represents us who comes to a certain level of consciousness. The thing about Jesus was that he knew who he truly was. That's why Sunday and the Mother's Day, I was re-listening to some of that, and how I was talking about how that he seemed to be rude to his mother and to his brothers and looked past them and said, "You're all my mother and my brother." He wasn't being rude, but he was being who he truly was, of who he was as the one who came through his parentage, his genetics. Does that make sense to you? He was going beyond into the transcendent self that has no mother or father. Christ didn't have a mother or a father. Christ is the eternal, infinite mind of God, if you want to put it that way. It is the mind that created you as an idea in itself. When the invisible had its experience of its own consciousness of itself. Now that's kind of the big bang moment, I think, is when this infinite, invisible, no beginning, no end, can't name it, whatever, being, thing, finally comes to say to itself, I am, I exist. Now get this. Its realization of itself created you. Let's stay with that. When it had its realization of itself, you are the itself that it experienced. At that moment, God as an idea was created. Now, that self, in terminology of 3D spirituality religion, is called the Son of God. Again, you're going to hear that word and you're going to think of a son being a guy, a man, but it does not. It carries a spiritual connotation of an offspring of individualization. I'll try to give you an illustration. The sun, 93 million miles away? I can't even imagine this ball of infernal fire that's out there called the sun. It's amazing. But let's say it is the source of all light on the earth. All light comes from the sun. But the sun doesn't come to the earth itself. My God, we couldn't handle the sun. So it individualized itself, called rays of the sun. Ah, you get it?
Yes.
That's what hits the earth. That's what's hitting the plants. That's what's giving us life. And the earth is because the rays is the sun, but not all the sun. So you have to be careful. When we say we are God or spirit or divine, we're saying we're all that the divine is, but we're not all that the divine is. That's why no one person can contain all that God is. Not even Jesus. And Jesus knew that through the Christ of God's mind in him, knew that he was going to be maybe the first, but he was going to plant himself in the garden of collective humanity, and those who watered it, fertilized it, and taken care of it shall bring forth after its own kind the fruit of the divine in the collective. So when I say Son of God, it's the same thing as the ray of the sun. This is just introductory. We'll get. So I feel like I want to bring this to experience now.
Okay.
Winchester, Virginia. I'm in a meeting there and had quite an experience. And this is the experience. I experienced being one of the rays of the sun. In other words, I experienced being the Son of God, the offspring of God, the expression of God. At one level, I was God, but I wasn't all of God. It takes more than one ray from the sun. Can you imagine just one ray coming out the sun? Oh no, it had to individualize itself, what, millions, billions of times, whatever it takes to flood the whole place that it floods, wherever the sun touches. It takes a lot of rays to do that. But I experienced being a ray of the sun, literally. And even though I was one with my Creator in quality, I wasn't one in quantity. But I didn't know that as a ray of the sun because I was the sun. I thought I was still all the sun. But I wasn't. Therefore, I could not contain the complete consciousness of the all in my individualization, and therefore I burst into millions and billions of little sparkles of light. Of light. Sparks of light came out of that one ray because it cannot contain the all-encompassing consciousness of what it came out of. So the cool thing, and this is in my book Revelations. Well, it was a revelation of relationships. But the coolest thing that happened is that as these particles of light begin to descend down into the place to be made matter or materialize, many of these sparks went through each other. They went through each other. In other words, they didn't stay just individual sparks, but they collectively came and connected to other sparks. When they did, they created an interference pattern between them. My example, and I can speak to an older group, when we used to go steady, and there was a heart, and the heart was split, and he or she wore one part of the heart, you wore the other part, but they fit perfectly to make one heart. These are the people throughout your lifetimes that you have partnered with and had this connection with. And I call them, what? Star mates. Star mates. These are co-creative partners. These are people that will not judge you. They are people that can almost finish a sentence before you say it. These are people that you have a light connection with. And boy, if you're lucky to find one to marry or to have a relationship, good for you. Doesn't happen often, but if you are one of those that's blessed to marry a star mate and skip the soulmate dimension. Soulmates are work. The soul is the one doing the work on itself, and therefore it is a lot of work. So I'm trying to set a background is what I'm trying to do today to show you that as we move through these different dimensions, these powers are going to come alive and become active. And we must be at that stage where some things are getting ready to take place. So the only difference between Jesus and any other person is purely consciousness. Jesus is God's Son, or God's expression into the human story. So the only difference between an average person and Jesus is that he knows who he is, or she knows who she is. Once you know who you are, then you have joined the first fruits company. And that's what the world is waiting for, whether you know this or not. The world is waiting for enough of the first fruits that know their identity to come to a level or critical mass that will cause a major shift in the planetary consciousness. I also call them light workers. Something tells a lot of us, including myself, that everyone is here and has incarnated in this generation. But until they know who they are and reach critical mass, we will not make the shift. So one thing you've got to let go of, I have to let go of, is ageism. I know we all work on racism and sexism and all the isms, but I'll tell you a big one out there that I'm finding is ageism. And I've run into it right here in this place. People telling me, I feel like I'm in an old folks' home, or I've heard some really nasty things said about us because of our age. Instead of, oh my gosh, how much wisdom is in this room? How much experience is in this room? What could I learn from these elderly people? We are the elders. We are the elders. Anyway, so I'm saying that to say, don't quite shut down yet. All right, if you look on your paper, you'll see that there are 12 faculties, we're going to call them, which I've given to you. Then there is the disciple. Excuse me. Now it says that when Jesus reached a certain level of consciousness, he went about calling out the disciples. Wow. In other words, the disciples did not show up until they were called upon to come out. So we'll be dealing with that. How do we call out these different faculties within us? Each one has a location in the body that's connected to it, like chakras. Chakras have certain organs and parts of the body they connect to. So does the powers. And then there's a color. So if we look at the first one, which is faith, this is the first one that Jesus calls out, who is a fisherman, Peter. And he says to Peter, let down your net and follow me. I'm calling you. Peter represents faith. And we're going to talk about faith because it's an overused word. Some of these have been so overused in religion and even spirituality that it's just a word we use without understanding the depth of what truly faith is. Faith comes and is directed from the pineal gland. Now, can you imagine Charles Fillmore, over 150 some years ago, understanding the pineal gland? If that wasn't visionary. The color is deep blue. Now, to me, the deep blue connects you to the throat chakra, which means the power of words that you say. So each one of these has these, and we'll go through them. Then you have strength is Andrew. You have wisdom. John is love. Philip is power. And I found that interesting that in the 12 powers there is power in the power. But this is the power of dunamis in the Greek. Dunamis. And they were endowed with power from on high, which is dunamis in the Greek, which we get the word dynamite. Dynamite. So it is an explosion of power to get us through the most difficult and challenging aspects of our life. So anyway, we're going to go through each one of these and see what we can do to change and awaken these dimensions of power that is basically in us. We have about 5 minutes if there's any statements, questions, or how many of you here have been through the 12 power teachings somewhere before? Wow, that's a lot of you. Good, good. Many of these powers, many of these faculties are things that we learn from outside of ourselves. You learn about faith because this is what the Bible says about faith, or this is what the minister said about faith. This is what my church said about faith. I'm not talking about the teaching of faith. I'm talking about faith as a faculty of consciousness that's innate in you. So each one of these things come from within, not what we learn just from without. We'll awaken that. Okay, no comments, no questions. Good. I guess that's good.
How can we use these?
Yeah.
How can we use them?
Yeah.
Call them out.
Okay, so like when you're having an issue, you say,
Whatever disciple you want, you call it out. I call you forth, Peter. Right now I'm in a state of doubt. I'm being challenged. I'm not sure. Right now I need stability. I need that faith that passes understanding. I need faith.
I need a definition.
We will go into that. That'll be our first teaching will be on faith. All right, thank you so much for coming out, and appreciate it. Remember Randall's workshop will start here Saturday at 10 a.m. So, and then Sunday afternoon. I know it's asking to give up a lot of time for some of you, but I'm very sure that you'll be glad you did. He's an excellent teacher. He'll be very well prepared, and it totally will be a love offering thing, so there is no exact fee for it. Randall is ladies. Randall has such a heart for HeartLight. He gives every month. He just gives and gives and gives of himself. He comes here. He doesn't ask for any offerings or anything. So he truly is a heart person. So if you can come out and be with him on Saturday, it'd be great. All right, thank you so much. Have a great day and the rest of the week. And we'll hope to see you Saturday or Sunday. And thank you, V,
Yeah, thank you.
for letting us play today. That was fun.
We have like 12 bags of soil